Going to go ahead and call this Monday, August 5th, 2024 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks everyone for attending. I believe we do have some folks joining us remotely via Teams, so welcome to those individuals as well. Just for the record, Councillor Sweeney is excused and our city manager, Dana Smith, is joining us remotely from home. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Paul, do you mind leading us tonight? Thank you very much, Paul. We'll move on to communications from the public. If you're here to speak to one of our 3 public hearings, please wait until I call those items. Otherwise, anything you'd like to bring to the attention of the council, Toby, now would be your opportunity. Name and address for the record, please.
Toby Scott, 1478 Barclay Lane, Whitefish. And you have number 11 on your packet is a letter from me reiterating for the 3rd time a light at Baker and 13th. Not a roundabout, but a light. And I think that it could be that Giuseppe was late to the meeting because he got stuck in the traffic on Baker Avenue. Oh, you were flying over the traffic, I presume. So that's one of the things that I wanted to try and urge, because that is city, it's not highway. And then the second, regarding Baker Avenue, is that 2nd Avenue, if there's any way to urge the MDOT, which probably have control of that light, to put a sensor in or something. You know, there's like one period of time for about a half an hour that the north-south traffic, they actually make left turns longer than 2 cars worth. Yep. And I think it's like 9:30 in the morning or something for some reason. And then it's like 3 or 4 cars can go through. And so if there's a way that we can, Public Works or city manager, urge MDOT to put a sensor on that thing so that it knows when there's cars, lets a bunch of them through. They've got a few of them down on Highway 98 at the Hutton Plaza and like that they just sense how long it is. A couple other things is I took a trip to the top of the parking lot the other day and found that there were no parking spaces, and it's difficult to turn around up there. A couple of years ago at summertime, I urged this because that parking lot gets full and cars go in and you keep driving up looking for a spot until you get up to the top, realize there aren't any. Then you have to turn around and there's a line of cars following you. And it's a real simple thing. If you've been to a city bigger than within 100 miles of here, they have them in parking lots. It's just a little counter. It counts how many cars go in, how many go out. It relates that to the number of parking spaces that are in there. And when it gets full, a little sign pops up that says full. It would be even better to put a little barrier on there so that they can only get in if there are parking spaces available. And that's just an annoyance factor, which we only have to really deal with in summertime. And the last thing is, once again, I noticed that the high school kids did a lovely job of painting the sewer drain lines, informing that it was going to the lake or wherever it goes. And I'd still like to see our traffic signal boxes painted. Kalispell managed to paint them. Bozeman ones are beautiful. And maybe you can assign it to another group of high school kids or art class at Flathead College. That's all. These are just little details that would enhance our city.
Great. Thanks, Toby. Further public comment tonight, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Patrick Tabor. For the record, that's T-A-B-O-R. I reside at 335 Columbia Avenue, and I also own the building at 309 Wisconsin. I had reached out to several of you. I'm asking that you respectfully remove the Woodside Drive from the consent agenda item so that we could debate it. I did not know about that hearing that happened back in July, nor did any of our tenants. We looked through all our mail and everything else. We never received notice that that was under consideration. I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of counselors as well as the city engineer. I'd like to just have a dialogue about that and maybe consider some alternatives, because as it stands right now, that particular ordinance would just about do my business in and substantially drop the value of the business, because my tenants would have nowhere to go. That's a 21-year-old property. It was read in and it was part of the subdivision. It's actually part of Woodside subdivision. And folks that have been in that office for the last 21 years have been parking much the way they have been now. I fully understand, because I go to the office several times, so I know what the safety issues are. But I do believe that there are some alternatives to look at that wouldn't completely devastate the folks in that building, but still achieve some of the safety objectives. So with due respect, I hope you consider pulling that off the consent so we can debate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick. Further public comment this evening?
Hi, good evening. My name is Skylar Johnston. I live at 174 Armory Road. Appreciate your guys' time. Thank you. I see that the Armory Road reconstruction project is on the agenda tonight, and I would like to take a moment to encourage the council to act on this with some urgency. I'm here with a number of my neighbors who live on or near the curve, and we're glad to see this is on the agenda and grateful it's being addressed. But with that, we have two requests we hope can be taken into consideration regarding the plan. Number one, we've read through the proposals that you guys will discuss later tonight, and we ask that all efforts be made to try to honor the proposed project timeline highlighted in one of those proposals. We understand it's far too late to implement any major improvements before winter, but it would be amazing if this could be completed before the winter of 2025-26. I can share with you numerous photos and firsthand accounts of all the cars and trucks and trailers that have ran off the road on that corner. But I'm sure you're already aware of how dangerous that corner is, especially in the winter. So, and my second request is that we are given an opportunity to share some thoughts and concerns and some traffic calming ideas with the Public Works team and the firm that is awarded the bid. We're not, nor pretend to be, city planners, and will certainly yield to the experts. But there's a few factors at play with regards to Armory that make it a pretty unique situation that I suspect a simple traffic study wouldn't really pick up on. Again, we're not experts. But living near that corner, our dining room looks out over Armory, so does one of our kids' bedrooms. Our family frequently uses Armory as pedestrians to get to and from Muldown and to the Whitefish Trail that parallels 2nd Street. And we are by far not the only ones that use Armory for that purpose. We see a lot of near misses between vehicles and other vehicles, or between vehicles and pedestrians on Armory, and we understand just by living there the profile of the type of driver that frequents Armory. So we have a lot of awareness of the issues on that bend. I see in one of the proposals that will be discussed later tonight that there is time dedicated this fall for public outreach, which is appreciated. But we just hope to be part of that conversation prior to any formalization of a final plan. So, thank you.
Was it Skylar?
Skylar.
Thank you. Thanks
Mr.
for your
Mayor, may I just address that kind of quickly? Because I think it's a little misconception about what's going on here, and I know I see Craig sitting over there. All we're awarding tonight is an engineering contract.
Okay.
That's all it is. There'll be an entire public process that will happen after that. When we get engineering, and I was on the selection committee for that, so when
Great.
we solicit for a proposal,
Yeah.
then we get something that's just a rudimentary, this is what we think might work.
Yep.
You should pick us because we're thinking out of the
Yeah.
box, kind of. So
Okay.
all we're getting is, we're just awarding an engineering contract. We're not
Right.
awarding anything for any
Yeah.
design. There'll be a full public process after that.
Great.
I think everyone in that neighborhood, and it's something we certainly discussed with all of the engineers, this
Yeah.
timeline is extremely important.
Yes.
But it's going to be very important for
Yeah.
everyone in that neighborhood to understand we'll work as quickly as we can.
Yep.
It's also very important to understand it's a very expensive project that will
Yeah.
be funded by tax resort revenues.
Yep.
And we may not be able to do it tomorrow, so.
No,
that's-
yeah,
So I just
completely
want to,
understand.
I just want to manage
Yeah.
expectations a little bit, because it's something we did talk about with all of the consultants.
Yeah.
And we know that, we're going to try and get to it as quickly as we can. We chose Morris and Merrily was the committee's preferred
Yep.
engineering firm,
Yep.
simply because they're ready to go. They can start working this fall on the engineering and public process. And so, anyway.
Yeah, I
that's-
just
I
wanted-
just wanted to
yeah.
manage expectations a little
Yeah.
bit. so.
No, I appreciate the clarification. You know, we saw the proposal in the agenda tonight, and their proposals looked pretty well researched. And from our perspective, the outside perspective, it looked pretty definitive. So I think we have some ideas that can kind of enhance what we saw in that proposal, and I just want to make sure they're heard before they move forward with that.
There'll be an entire public process,
Right.
as Steve can tell you, that we went through on Caro Avenue just recently,
Right.
which is our resort tax project this summer, so.
Great.
Yep.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, Skylar. Thanks, Andy. Further public comment?
My name is Greg Hennon, 178 Army Road. Thank you for your time, council. I'm not going to piggyback a little bit on what Skylar said, but like Andy said, the project is not going to be probably started until 2025 and finished in 2026. My wife and I, we were the ones that were awoken at 3:14, January 14th, when the truck went through the guardrail, retaining wall, and hit our garage. So, and within 3 days later, another truck hit the guardrail. So in the meantime, before they start the project, we're wondering, what are you going to do to help prevent? More signage, speed bumps, lighted signage like on 18th? That's all we're asking. Just in the meantime, Bridget's been doing great. His cops have been patrolling, pulling people over, so I thank the police force. Craig Workman, you guys have been out there a lot. Thank you. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
Evening. I'm Brad Buemiller, 18 Barnes Ranch Road, which is 182 Armory Road after a subdivision turned off. Skylar, Greg, and I, we're the three houses right there. My family's been on that corner about 100 years. First area in Whitefish was that location. What they're saying is an absolute fact, and Andy, thank you for filling us in on the timeline. What we're trying to do is get some traction, ask for help. I won't let my kids ride their bike to Moldown. It's just, I won't. If you guys, anybody in this room, I invite you over to my house when school starts at 5 p.m., because I'll be out there. I have. And I've been with Bridger, and you know, I let those guys know they can park at the end of our driveway. Dave, I appreciate everything you guys do. You know what I'm talking about. Right there, you can park anytime. I don't care. But we have city-run bike programs that go to a city-run park on one of the most dangerous roads in town, and maybe it's just coming to your attention. But what we're asking is for some help, because something's gonna happen we can't undo. A truck parking in Greg's garage, I mean, that's Dukes of Hazzard what happened. It really is. And on Wednesday, garbage day, I mean, who knows whose garbage can's gonna hit the ditch. So I figured this out on weekends. It's actually kind of nice to be at home. You don't have the contractors, you don't have the commuters. But when school hits, that's one major artery coming in. Do a traffic study right there. You'll figure out that's as busy as any other place coming into Whitefish. We're not here throwing horns in the air. We're just saying we're concerned. There's a whole group of people. But again, my daughter says, can I ride my bike to school? And I say, sorry, hon, we can't. And that, you know, Skylar, he walks his kids to school, but I've seen them jump the ditch more than once. So that's all we have, and as we move forward into the next parts of this, we'll be very much in touch with you, and that's all we had to say.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate your comments. Further public comment this evening? Michelle, anyone online? We'll move on to our consent agenda. You do have the July 15th, 2024 regular meeting minutes enclosed in the packet. Giuseppe?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda with further discussion, though, please.
Is there a second to the motion? Further discussion on the consent agenda.
Yes.
You'd like to pull 5B?
I like to pull it out. I never know what the right time is by Robert's
Would you
rules.
like to address that now before we
Yes,
adopt the
sir.
consent?
I'd love to pull out ordinance, it's our second reading of ordinance 24-09 for further discussion, and if everybody's okay, we could put it as a first item in the upcoming agenda.
We can address it right now. Would be
Okay.
preferred. Yep.
So as Mr. Tabor has mentioned, he has reached out, at least to me and to some other of my colleagues, as well as to Craig Workman, and pointing out the issue about that particular street. When we approved the ordinance, we approved new parking restriction for 4 different areas in town. One of those areas was the address Mr. Tabor was talking about, where my understanding, and I might be incorrect, but he checked with Craig Workman, there is a business there, a group of businesses in a condo-type setting that have been parking along that street near the stop sign illegally, still legally, but the 100 feet preclusion would cause those businesses not to have any other parking area to go. So he's talked to me. It's a legislative matter, so I had no problem addressing it. I understand he talked to our Director of Public Works, and I was trying to bring it back to discussion, maybe proposing a trade-off where it's either alternate side parking, maybe because the challenge is to have, if 2 cars park on both sides, then the street becomes a 1-lane street and it's not safe. But I understand, talking to Craig, a compromise could be restricting parking only on one side of the street while leaving parking on the other side, which is the way it's been traditionally working until overflow of visitors has caused the concern. So I do not know how to phrase an amendment to an ordinance, but I like to collect this concern and put it back up for discussion. And maybe, Craig, since you talked to Mr. Tabor, would you feel comfortable addressing this, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Pat and I did talk, and I went back and checked the records, and we did mail a notice to 309 Wisconsin LLC at 335 Columbia Avenue, so I have no idea where it went, but that was on the mailing list. We did also advertise the public hearing twice in the paper, and so I think the city did our due diligence to advertise the fact that we were proposing parking changes. However, I wouldn't have an issue recommending no parking on one side within 100 feet of Wisconsin as a trial. I still think that in the winter months, we may have some safety concerns out there, but, for 6 or 7 months out of the year, it won't be a problem.
So would those be fixed on one side even during our snowplow policy?
Yeah, I would recommend it
So they're
be
not-
no parking on the north side 24/7. 365, correct.
Would
So
that
we
help
would-
address your concerns, Patrick? If you don't mind, please. Just so it's read into the public record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think that's fair because what's happening now is on the south side, there are no driveways or residents. So I think you might recall, for those of you that at the hearing, the president of the association said she recognized that it's part of a bigger, greater concern, and that what it will likely do is push the tenants even further in front of their houses and their mailboxes. But that doesn't happen on the south side because there's 4 full city lots that they can park and not impede anyone. So if they can park on the south side, but not on the north side, which is a very small area anyway, then they won't be impeding and causing one-way traffic, and it should make it safer. And I do recognize what Mr. Workman's saying about the long-term strategy, but I think that's probably our concern everywhere, like, on 3rd Avenue coming off of Spokane, right by the Firebrand, and there, same thing. It's one way when they both park on both sides. We have this all over the city. So I know you guys are trying to figure out a bigger, grander plan, but unfortunately, if we do just this one thing to this one area, then these folks literally have nowhere else to go other than head east and then start really causing some problems with residents. So I think this is a great compromise, and I appreciate you thinking of it.
No, I'm sympathetic to your plight. I own the business at 236 Wisconsin on the corner of Skiles and Wisconsin, and our employees overflow onto Skiles, and at times during the day, it's one-way traffic. And there's also concern with the crossing, the pedestrian crossing. So we were able to expand our parking. You don't have that luxury, so. Yep. Further discussion from the council, or would you like to amend the ordinance, Giuseppe?
Yes, sir. Although I'm not the technician here, I would like to leave the ordinance as is, but for that street where we would prohibit parking only on the north side of that particular street. Craig, does that address your capability of amending the ordinance?
Yeah, so it would be no parking on the north side of Woodside Lane within 100 feet of Wisconsin Avenue.
And that would be amending section 4 of the ordinance.
Yes, it was section 4. Thank you. Yeah.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. That motion does carry unanimously, which brings us back to our original motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. The consent agenda does pass. Thank you, Patrick. We'll move on to our first public hearing of the
John?
evening. Yes.
Sorry. We skipped over volunteer boards, and we do have
Oh, I'm
somebody who
sorry.
would like to speak.
Okay, I
Towards that.
apologize. Sorry, Cameron.
Good evening. Cameron Blake, 825 Lexan Trail, and I'm the chair of the Community Housing Board. This is my first city committee I've ever been on, so it's been a bit of a learning experience, and asking for your input. We have a housing committee that wants to make a difference and put our time to good use and help make an impact on our housing crisis. We want to make sure we're spending our time in a way that's useful and are asking council for guidance in how to do that. We've been working on items out of the housing roadmap and following that and looking at the city items there, and that's kind of what's guided us, and then picked and chooses that. Specific question is around that annexation policy that we worked on for many meetings and many hours last year, and with the goal of getting it to you all. And when that was rejected, some of the committee members were a bit frustrated, just that maybe we should have touched in sooner, had more guidance. How do we go forward? Not really unclear if we're supposed to do round 2 there, or it's dead and done on that one. So that's a specific example, but then in general, how do we confirm council support and interest in what we're working on and know that we're working on things that are helping, we hope to be helping the city. Our 2 current working areas are creating a pipeline of land and partnership opportunities. Next tier projects is right on the roadmap. So we're mapping and looking at where services are and what might be potential for pipeline for specifically some of the Whitefish housing or housing Whitefish, or if somebody else were to come in. And then also zoning for affordability and flexible forms, which is on the roadmap. And so we're starting with the state list of items you need to look at, but hoping to offer input kind of ahead of or in partnership with the growth policy so things can get done quickly once that starts moving. So anyway, any feedback or how we could better check in along the way?
I think just addressing the council during public comment would be very beneficial.
And you'll say like time out if we're headed in the wrong direction, or?
And we can also schedule a work session, at a
session.
quarterly basis, if that would be helpful as well.
Okay,
And you can coordinate that directly with Dana and Michelle,
okay,
so.
that sounds good. Thank you for all your time, all the time.
Thanks, Cameron. Further volunteer board reports from the audience? How about the council? Not seeing any. We did adopt the consent agenda, so we will move on to our first public hearing of the night, which will be item 6A, consideration of a request from Barbara McCartney for a conditional use permit to construct a guest house located at 3 Tides Way, and the property is zoned WLR, which is our one-family limited residential district. Wendy?
Mr. Mayor, real quick, I would tell you I would recuse from this hearing.
Okay. Let the public record reflect that Councilor Davis will recuse himself.
Okay, good evening. So the request before you is a conditional use permit to construct a guest house. The site has a single-family home, and access to the guest house will be by a new driveway off the main driveway shared with the single-family home. A CUP is required in the WLR zone for guest houses. Again, the property is located at 4 Tides Way. The property is a little more than 4 acres. and again is developed as a single-family home. The property is surrounded by residential uses in the golf course. It has split zoning, WCR down by the lake and then WLR up where the actual home is located. The property has a growth policy designation of suburban. It is served by all public services and facilities. We did notice adjacent landowners and placed legal notices in the paper, and we did not receive any comments. We review conditional use permits according to the criteria in the zoning regulations. The growth policy designates this area as suburban, which is consistent with CR, ER, and SR. LR is considered a urban designation. However, the uses are all single family, which is also available in this suburban residential designation, so it does comply with the growth policy. The underlying zoning, again, is split between CR and LR. The zoning regulations talk about how you can do development on one part of the property or the other, but not both, and one has to remain open. The area that's in the WCR is mostly within the Lost Loon Lake and its associated wetlands, so it won't be developed at all. The property is considered a flag lot, and the setbacks are 15 feet on all sides, so setbacks are being met. Parking can be met, height will be, and lot coverage will be confirmed at the time of building permit, and the guest house standards are being met. The site is suitable for the proposed use. There's adequate space. There is existing access off of Tides Way, which is a 30-foot wide private road and utility easement. It is paved, but not to the full 30-foot width. Tides Way, again, is a private road that connects to Fairway Drive, which is a private road, and eventually gets out to the public streets. It is adequate for emergency situations, and the driveway must be paved for the first 80 feet, which is one of our requirements. The applicant must work with the fire department to ensure adequate access, and that is a recommended condition of approval. Again, the property is located on Lost Loon Lake, which also has an associated wetland. Lost Loon Lake has a buffer of 75 feet with a 10-foot structural setback. Wetlands have a 100-foot buffer, but permit a 25-foot buffer reduction for low-intensity development, which is defined as a 2.5-acre residential lot or greater and cannot be further subdivided. So this lot is over 4 acres, and I wasn't able to locate any sort of restrictive covenant limiting the further development of the lot, but the reality is the narrow private road is going to prohibit any sort of further development, so the reduced setback and buffer seems suitable to us. Let's see. The site plan is effectively dealing with all the parking, traffic circulation, open space. All the services are available. It should not have any neighborhood or community impact, and it should be compatible with the neighborhood with its residential use. The Planning or Community Development Board held a public hearing on July 18th, and they unanimously recommended approval subject to 7 conditions of approval. Just a couple of the outstanding ones. Guest houses have a deed restriction because they cannot be rented out. They're different than an ADU, so they'll have to do that to accompany their building permit, and then they need to work with the fire department for emergency access. Can I answer any questions for you?
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her planning report? Not seeing any. Wendy, we did advertise for a public hearing on item 6A of the agenda. We'll hold that public hearing now. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here? If you have some comments to make, you're welcome to. Just name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Sierra McCartney, 7227 Farm to Market Road, Whitefish. I'm here tonight representing my mother, Barbara McCartney. My family are longtime residents of Whitefish. My mother, sister, and her husband recently purchased the property at 3 Tides Way. The vision for this property is to have multi-generational living, where the grandparent, parents, and grandchild live on the same property and support each other. The grandparent in their retirement has more time and can give that extra time to the grandchild, reading, playing, and running around to extracurricular activities. The grandchild can then grow up nurtured and supported by both their parents and their grandparent. And the grandparent can then age in place, supported when needed by the parents. Located in town, the property allows the grandparent to easily meet up with friends for daily social walks and to ride a bike into town for weekly volunteer work. My sister, her husband, and 4-year-old son currently live in the existing house on the property. While my family is close, the success of multi-generational living is dependent on everyone having their own space. So the request for the conditional use permit is to build a guest house on the property. This would be a separate dwelling unit where my mother, the grandparent, can live. This is the sole purpose of the guest house. My family views the Tidesway property as a forever home and a property to pass down to the grandchildren. The property is unique in that it is in town, yet has privacy and open views. The property is on an accessible lake and is adjacent to large open space. This type of property is difficult to find and is something to hold on to. The property is located in the Tidesway subdivision, and the subdivision CC&Rs do restrict the lot from being further subdivided. That wasn't brought up in the planning board meeting, so I just wanted to bring that up. I'm a landscape architect, and I'll be working on the site plan for the guest house. If the conditional use permit is approved by council, we will then bring on an architect to help design the house. A well thought out, well designed house is important to my family to have. And I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Sierra. Any questions for the applicant's representative? Not at the time.
Okay,
Thanks, Sierra. Is there any additional public comment this evening? Michelle, anyone online? We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for preferably a motion. Rebecca?
I move to approve WCUP 24-06, the findings of fact and recommended conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Community Development Board on July 18th, 2024.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded by Councilor Fury. Further discussion?
I'll just make one quick comment, Sarah. We did the same thing on our property for my mother, and it's a really wonderful experience. And to have the opportunity to do that and have parents age with you is really special. So, good job.
Additional comments?
Yeah, I second Andy's comments. It's good to see multi-generational families taking care of each other. I grew up in a country where that's normal. So good job for trying and hopefully getting it.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously with Councilor Davis recusing himself. We'll move on to item 6B. Thanks, Sierra, for coming this evening. Consideration of a request from Jesse Deal on behalf of the Whitefish Community School to expand the Whitefish Community School into a daycare center. The property is located at 805 Park Avenue and Zone WR1, which is our one-family residential district. Nelson.
Thank you. As you said, they're requesting a conditional use permit to, currently they're operating a daycare. The conditional use permit is required for a daycare center, which means having more than 15 children. So a daycare is less than 15 children. They are proposing site improvements, which includes 5 additional parking spaces, a turnaround for traffic circulation and drop-off area, as well as an additional 2,000 square foot, up to 2,000 square foot expansion. The expansion has not been designed or, located yet, as they're waiting for approval before continuing with that part of the project. But the application did specify it was less than 2,000 square feet. The building is at this point conceptualized to be a portable classroom that would be built off-site and brought in. Of course, it would need to meet all building codes and zoning requirements, just like any other building in the WR1. Property is a little bit over 1 acre. It is surrounded by residential and school. The Whitefish Christian School is next door. There's residential uses all around in WR1 and 2. It is, the growth policy designation is urban. The notice was mailed out to advisory agencies, neighbors within 300 feet, and a notice of public hearing was in the pilot. I received 10 written comments, 5 in support and 4 with concerns over traffic, snow storage, and noise. As far as review and findings of fact, it complies with the growth policy as it is, designated urban, which which the daycare center is a conditional use in WR1, and has currently been developed in accordance with as a daycare use. As far as compliance with regulations, the proposed expansion will need to meet setbacks in the WR1, which are 25 feet in the front, 10 feet in the side, and 20 in the rear. As far as the height requirements, there is a 35-foot height limit for primary buildings. Accessory buildings have a 24-foot height requirement that will need to be met at time of building permit. As far as the lot coverage is concerned, there's a 35% limit. Currently, they are at 4.9%. Adding a 2,000 square foot building would increase that to 9.5%, which would still be under 35%. So as far as the special provisions for daycare centers, drop-off sites need 20 feet for every 8 children. It needs to be a signed drop-off area. Just the roundabout is 93 feet long, which would allow for about 32 children. Fences are required for outdoor play areas, and they must be located in the rear half of the lot. They're not proposing any expansion of the play area, but any future play areas would need to be fenced to meet this requirement. And so I've included a condition just for future, in case that's something they do in the future. Daycare centers in residential zones cannot be architecturally modified to resemble a non-residential appearance. This is not being proposed. There's no signage proposed, but future signage needs to meet the daycare requirements as to not flash, rotate, or blink. Preference is given to daycare facilities on collectors or arterial streets. This is not on a collector, but 7th is nearby and is a major collector. As far as site suitability, there's adequate usable land area, and we'll be able to meet emergency standards, and there's no environmental constraints. As far as the quality and functionality, the parking, the zoning regulations require 1 parking space for every 8 individuals. That's separate from the daycare requirements and the special provisions, which is for the drop-off area for the number of children. So just the number of parking spaces would allow for 40 adults and supervised children, accounting for employees and parents that go in and out. So as far as the traffic circulation, traffic is going to be the drop-off will be accessed off the alley to the west of the property, which will need to be constructed to the extent of the project. The drop-off area terminates again at East 8th Street. There's no open space required, but again, it'll be 9.5%, which is under the 35% lot coverage. They're not applying for fencing. Landscaping will need to be reviewed at time of building permit to make sure they're meeting all those requirements. Utilities will be any new utilities will be required to be underground. They have not proposed any, that will go with the building permit. As far as neighborhood impact, the noise of the outdoor play area is not anticipated to impact the neighborhood. It would increase if there are more children playing. Thus, smoke, glare, heat, there's no impact anticipated. Smoke, fumes, odor. The hours of operation are proposed to be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. As far as the neighborhood community compatibility, the existing building will, again, any new buildings or modifications will need to meet the architecture review standards. Any exterior changes will need to be approved by staff. An existing neighborhood is a mixture of residential, childcare, and school uses in the area. So as far as the conditions of approval suggested, there are a few specific to the daycare center. One being that the alley and new parking spaces must be paved and constructed to public works standards to the extent of the project. Signage must be architecturally compatible to the primary building and not flash, rotate, or blink. Existing residential structures shall not be significantly modified as to exhibit a non-residential appearance. Again, where outside play facilities are provided, there shall be maintained a 6-foot site obscuring fence around the play yard. The play yard should be situated in the rear one half of the site. The new building must meet ARC review and building code standards, and again is valid for 18 months. So at the Community Development Board meeting, staff found the request met the requirements for approval. The public hearing had 7 members of the public. They made comments. 2 were in favor, and 5 had those various concerns such as traffic, snow storage, access, noise, and then there were some environmental concerns. The Community Development Board, following the hearing, they unanimously voted to recommend approval.
Thanks, Nelson. Any questions for Nelson on his staff report? Rebecca.
Nelson, I'm kind of confused about this because, so they're building a 2,000-foot building off-site, and then they're moving it onto the site. Is that correct?
That is what is being proposed at this point, a portable classroom.
And then it will be where the garage is?
No, they have not designed and located on the site at this
Oh,
point.
okay. Okay, because I was confused because there was a picture of a garage.
Correct. There is an existing
And it talked
garage.
about how big the garage was, and I thought, okay, so they have a garage. Okay, so then it could actually be where there's a slope down where the parking drop-off is. They might actually locate it in that area where there is an open space? Or,
Yes, as to my knowledge, they're not planning on tearing down any of the existing buildings to
okay,
replace it.
yeah, it seemed like a kind of a big building to build off-site and move on in such a small road, but I guess everything's possible. Okay, thank you.
Ben.
Mr. Mayor, I have no financial interest in this matter, but I think given my involvement with the school, I would also recuse myself from this hearing as well.
Thank you, Ben. Easy night for you. I'm just kidding. Further questions for Nelson? Andy?
So, Nelson, in terms of determining maximum number of students, is it the drop-off? Is that the only drop-off area? That's the only thing in our zoning code?
Yes, so the length of the drop-off area determines how many children can be in the school as far as our zoning. I don't know what the state regulates, but their licensing is separate.
I assume state licensing has per square foot or something, or per teacher, or all those kind of things, okay. Would it be possible for us to condition a maximum number of students? And if so, how would we monitor that?
Well, any additional, anything in the future that would be able to increase the number of students would have to come back as a conditional use permit to amend this one. So for example, if they were able to add a larger drop-off area or more parking to accommodate more staff, they would need to amend their CUP, and it would be reviewed fully at that time as well. I don't know if they would still be interested in conditioning a maximum, but that would good a question for Angie.
I think you could, but I think the ordinances by the amount of drop-off that they can do probably already caps that. I don't know how we track that, though.
Yeah, I guess that's my biggest concern. It's like, well, we can only do 32, but we have 50, so, okay. Thanks.
Further questions for Nelson? We did advertise for a public hearing on item 6B of the agenda. We'll hold that public hearing now. Is Jesse or Doug, you'd like to address council, please?
Good evening, Doug Petmeyer, TD&H Engineering, 450 Corporate Drive, and we're the technical representative. Jesse is going to speak to just kind of the idea and why the school is requesting this, but I was going to kind of give a summary of, I don't know if you guys had a chance to, most likely you did, watch the planning board meeting. There was actually a lot more questions than I anticipated. I think some of it was just a confusion of the process, but I would like to kind of highlight, some of the questions that did come up. There was a question about us constructing a fence in the alleyway to screen the parking lot, and obviously we cannot construct a fence in a public right-of-way, but the neighbor could construct their own fence if that is a concern. There was concerns about landscaping. Landscaping is of course required by the planning and zoning regulations, so we'll be required to comply with all of those. There's quite a bit of discussion on storm and wanting a design at the time of planning board. And so just to kind of reiterate again, this plan, it will be in excess of the 10,000 square foot threshold. It will be a full review by Public Works and Craig and his group. So we'll be required to come into compliance with all of that. The stormwater will not just be discharged to Cow Creek. It will have to be treated, detained, back to historical flows. The alley was I think it was a little bit of a confusion that we were maybe closing the alley and actually we're improving the alley. It is still a public alley. It's open to the public, so there's no proposal to do that. Andy, you already kind of commented. There was some questions about the number of students, like this could balloon to 120. It can't. It's limited by the drop-off. And I think if council is going to go that way with a specific number, I just would like a clarification, because if you do the math, I think it's right now the site plan is like 94 feet. So if you divide by 20, you get kind of a like 4 point something, and then you multiply that by 8, and you get 37 students, 32. I'm just not sure. Is it just you drop off the decimal and it goes down to 32? So maybe a little clarification if you guys do go that route, just so we understand that. But yeah, other than that, I'm available for any questions. And like I said, Jesse would like to speak and make a couple of comments just on behalf of the school.
Great, thanks, Doug. Any questions for Doug? Rebecca?
Do you anticipate there's going to be difficulty building on the side in any way?
Nope.
Okay.
So with just real general, the 5 spaces that we have, like you already commented, it's kind of a swale.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a retaining wall that's going to be required, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, I think the school would wish it was flat, but unfortunately, that's the only place to put parking. And really the design was, I think it was originally done by Bruce Booty. It's kind of ingenious to pull, everybody's driven over there, it's a mess over there. But this way you can you come off of 8th, you get traffic off the street, and then people can then turn and go the correct direction on 8th instead of trying to like slingshot and go behind the Christian Academy, those kind of things. So I think it'll improve it. Yes, there will be some additional traffic obviously, but I think it will address some of the safety concerns that probably exist right now, and then also getting parking off of the street as well. So,
Thanks.
Yep.
Additional questions for Doug?
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Doug. Jesse?
Hello, my name is Jessie Deal. I am at 52A Elderberry Loop in Whitefish. Can you guys hear me okay?
Thanks, yeah.
I'm at 52A Elderberry Loop in Whitefish. I'm the director of Whitefish Community School, and I just wanted to speak to why we are applying for this conditional use permit to expand the school. As many of you may know, the 2023 SEDS report stated that the top 2 critical needs for Montana were housing and childcare. And we've seen that directly reflected in our wait list. Our wait list has averaged at least 120 families for the past 3 to 4 years. As one of the few nonprofit childcares in the Valley, we see it as our duty to meet the community's needs as best we can. And our organization believes we're in a unique position for a few reasons to meet these needs. For one, we have an acre of land that's underutilized. 2, we're in walking distance to many of the Whitefish public and private schools. And 3, we're an established organization, and we've been around for over 20 years now. We hope to continue making a positive impact on the community, and thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it. Any questions for Jesse? Thank you. Any public comment this evening? Just name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Steve Caudry. I live at 101A Forest Ridge Drive here in Whitefish. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I happen to be a member of the board of this school, and I've been on it for several years, and I have a long history of in education, and it's been my honor and privilege to watch. I've been on the expansion committee for the whole time I've been on the board. And we've looked at the issues, we've gone back through the whole history, we've made every effort to try to be considerate to our neighbors and to say, and to address this issue that's pressing here in our valley with childcare. As you already heard from the director, 120 people on our list. This is after we went through and called everybody to make sure they still wanted to be on the list. We went from 160 down to 120, so we made some progress, but it's a dire need. And during the planning committee hearing, I was really touched with the chair summed it up by saying that he experienced that we had been trying to be very thoughtful, and we are as a community and as a board to be considerate of our place in the surrounding area, the other schools nearby, and also the people who live there. And after the hearing, we had somebody come and want to do an interview, and the director and I were there, and I walked this person around and showed them about where it's going to be, and one of the neighbor right immediately next to us on the west side came running out the back and says, "Are you at the school?" I said, "I am. I'm on the board." He said, "I couldn't get to the hearing, but I'm so excited and I'm really supportive of to what you guys are doing, and I really like the way that you're trying to approach it." And that was really touching. So I hope that you'll find this in favor, and that we are really looking forward to do this for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Hello, my name is Brooks McCartney, and I live at Three Tides Way in Whitefish, and I just wanted to voice my support for the expansion of the Whitefish Community School. My son goes there, and as a working parent at a local Whitefish business, finding reliable, quality childcare was really, really tough, and it was what allowed me to go back to work and keep my job, and so I'm very grateful for the Whitefish Community School for enrolling my son. He's doing great there and thriving, and I think the opportunity that the school has with having such a large lot in Whitefish with the price of real estate, it's an incredible opportunity, excuse me, to allow the school to expand and help other local families, sorry, I have a cold, have childcare and be able to work in this community. You really need two parents working in order to afford everything going on. And so I would really hope that you guys would approve the expansion of the community school. Thank you.
Thanks, Brooks.
Good evening again. Sierra McCartney, 7227 Farm to Market Road, Whitefish. So I'm getting kind of emotional about this, but and I haven't been sleeping, sorry. I have a 4-month-old daughter. So I've heard that we're kind of in a child care crisis recently, and I just had a daughter, and then when you're trying to find child care, you realize how bad it really is. So I started getting on wait lists when I was pregnant, and yes, we have not been able to get into daycares, and fortunately my husband and I have very flexible jobs, so we're able to work it out, and we have a grandparent that lives here that's able to take care of our daughter 1 day a week. So we've hodgepodge care together, and that's great while my daughter is an infant. What's really hard for me to think about is we know based on studies how important preschool is for the development of children, and my concern is that I'm not going to be able to get my child into preschool, and I'm probably the 120th person on the wait list. I am on the wait list at the Whitefish Community School. So it's a big thing in our town right now, and I think it's very important that we really take this opportunity, even if it's only a few extra spots, that's so many more families that we can really help out. And at the planning board meeting, it was very apparent how important it also is to address traffic calming measures in these neighborhoods. And I think we really need to pay attention and listen to the families and the residents in the homes nearby the daycare and see if there are any traffic calming measures that we can take through design measures, because I think we really need to listen to their voices as well, because it is an expansion. So those are my points that I wanted to make tonight, and I just wanted to voice the support of the expansion. Thank you.
Thanks, Sierra. Further public comment this evening? Paul.
Good evening. Paul McCann, 340 Summers Avenue is where I reside. And I'm kind of connected to this property as my wife Janice and I, we own a vacant lot at 811 Park Avenue. So we're abutting the property across the alley. We're abutting the property. So we're really tied to that. And of course, we got the notice about the big expansion and they're going to have to tear down all the trees. And we had a little bit of a oasis back there, and now it's going to be a parking lot. So of course we didn't like that. But Janice and I talked about it, and we try to always support the kids and the young families in town. So we're supporting it. I mean, we hope you vote for it. But I got a couple of ideas for you, so if I can go through those. And it really gets down to interfacing. We have a commercial. This is going to be a pretty good-sized commercial endeavor here. And how is it going to interface with the residential area? And that's what my suggestions all go to. And I don't know how many kids are going to be there. I see in the application it says 40 students is allowed, up to 40 students with this parking arrangement and drop off. So, and then I heard Doug say 37, 36, and I hear 30. So I don't know what the number is, but it's going to be substantially more. And being substantially more, we're going to have a lot of traffic in our alley. They're bringing the traffic off A Street, which is good, but they're bringing it right into my alley, which is not so good for me. So I want to see what we can do to minimize the congestion. And I have 3 children, and I've taken them to daycare and all the way through the school systems and dropped them off. And I noticed at these drop-off areas, you got 2 groups of people. You have the majority, they want to drop their children off and go. They got places to go. And then you have another little group that likes to visit, and they kind of hang there. And I'm afraid that in this area, there's going to be a lot of congestion. We're going to have cars parked, and it's just going to be, twice a day during the peak periods, the drop-off, pickup times. It's going to be congested back there. So when I looked at the map you have, the site plan there, you can see where they come in. It's 24-foot wide alley. They're coming in the alleyway, and then it tapers down. And my rough measurement is tapering down to like 12 feet wide in the alleyway. They're asphalt. And I think that should be wider. I asked Craig, and Craig said it's something like a standard alley is like 16 feet wide. Is it something of that nature? So maybe make it 16 feet wide. Just make it a few feet wider, because those cars are going to be, they want to pass each other. They want to get things going, and I don't want to see a big jam up there. So maybe widen that somewhat, I suggest. The lighting, I saw on the application, I think, where it said dark sky lighting or something. Well, I have dark sky lighting in summers behind my house, and it's not so dark in my bedroom. It's just super bright. And so I want to just ask that some sort of conditions or just concern for the neighbor that we don't have bright lights in our backyard, in our bedrooms at night. And obviously they said the hours are 8 to 5. Well, maybe the lights turn on at 7 and turn off at 7, or whatever. Just so the lighting is just consideration. That retaining wall is a concern of mine. I didn't see any drawings or elevations or so forth, but I know that we're going to have a retaining wall, which is, by my estimates, going to be 6 or 7 feet high in a daycare center. That should be built and designed above standards. I mean, that thing needs to be tiered and made safe for those children. So that's just a little concern I had. And then the last thing is the structure itself. In the application, it says it's going to be a stick-built structure on site or a portable classroom. I think that's what I saw there. And then I hear tonight it's going to be a modular type thing brought onto the site, built somewhere else. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity to build something nicer than the modulars, something nicer to look at, a little more attractive, and things that are portable seem to become permanent. And besides, this is an opportunity. I mean, I'm glad Doug is working on the project, a local civil engineer, but we can hire, if we build it on site, we can hire local contractors, hire tradespeople, local suppliers, materials. I mean, creates a job opportunity. So I think it should be, I think it should be conditional. It's a site-built project. I wish I knew where it was, but that's one thing. Another thing, but nevertheless, that's so to summarize, improve the parking flow of the alleyway to at least 16 feet wide in the alley itself. Consider the lighting. Let's make it good. If we're gonna do a retaining wall, let's make it safe for the kids. I notice they have a rail, but my kids all love to climb on rails, so I don't know if that makes it safer. And then a site-built building. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Hi there, Nancy Caudry, 101A Forest Ridge Drive. So I'm a grandparent of kids who have been to the school. They're now 5 and 6. So well adjusted these children are. We've helped a lot with the daycare, but I've met a lot of families, young families who have their kids in the school. I can't say enough positive things about the school. And we've helped with, as I say, we've helped with some childcare, but my husband and I still work. That happens sometimes when you're an artist. You work until you don't at the end. Anyway, I can't say enough about advocating for the need for more childcare. This is kind of a drop in the bucket in some ways. I mean, even having that many more places for these kids. I mean, it's obvious that Whitefish needs a lot more. I love seeing the young families. I know the housing issues are tough, and so are the childcare issues, both. But I sure like seeing young people around town. And yeah, can't say strongly enough how much I support this expansion. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Further public comment this evening? Doug.
I just wanted a chance to respond to some of Paul's questions. I just did a couple of notes here. Regarding the drop-off, yeah, we definitely have two types, but per the special provisions, I think it's required that it is signed to be drop-off only. You're not to linger, so there'll obviously need to be some policing there, but they're gonna have to comply with that requirement. The width of the alley is actually 24 feet. It's just not all within the public alley. We've actually shifted, so a portion of it is in the alley, and then the rest of it is on their property. And then you'll see the alley kind of shifts over, and the reason for that is, or the access shifts over, was we were trying to save some of the screening. As Paul mentioned, we do have to remove those trees, but that's the reason that the alley shifts over. But it is 24 feet because that gives it a two-way for people that park. They can then back out and go out safely. The retaining walls, it's a great point, and it's actually a zoning requirement that the walls will be tiered. So we can't stack them. So if it is over, I believe it's 4 feet, it'll have to be tiered. And then, yeah, the preference on the 2,000 square foot classroom is to go out. They'll be selecting an architect if approved, and then they'll work through what that construction is. Their preference would obviously be a stick frame structure, and not like a modular classroom, but that's something that they'll work with when they go out to select their architect. So just wanted to address those questions.
Thanks, Doug. Sure, up at the mic, please, Paul.
I appreciate Doug's comment about the width of the alley, but I guess I look down the future when I want to connect onto this alley. I need to connect on in the alley right away onto the blacktop. And I cannot connect on to the neighbor's property. So it should be a width that's a standard width in the alleyway. Should be a full 16 feet, I guess, what I'm thinking, for that purpose too. But it's just a little wider. I mean, it's going to be tight. I mean, there's going to be a lot of traffic there. So just a little wider makes it a little easier. You got the room, so why not do it? Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Further public comment this evening? Michelle, anyone online? Go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve WCUP, is it 24-07?
27.
27, I apologize. The findings of fact in the staff report and the eighth condition of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Community Development Board on July 18, 2024.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Giuseppe, would you like to address your motion?
Yeah, I'd like to. First of all, thank you for coming. You spent around 45 to 1 hour at the previous Community Development Board, and now you're here repeating your pledge, and that's appreciated. This is a use of land and a conditional use permit, and what better legacy than to take care of our next generation. So I'm proud and honored to be able to move. Number two, there is no conflict of interest, so although you recused yourself, I would invite a virtual vote from Councilor Davis because, again, he's fully fledged member of this council and he has no conflict of interest here, but I understand your etiquette, so thank you for that. I hope my colleagues will support this, and I saw you, Steve, at the Community Development Board, so I know where you're voting. Thank you so much.
Further comments? Rebecca.
Thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate everybody in the community that's really trying to take care of the kids and expand what we can. Thank you.
Further comments? I had one question, Craig, and I'm sympathetic to Paul's comment regarding the lighting and the casting onto adjacent residential properties. Didn't we shield the street lights on State Park and/or Texas to mitigate that concern?
Yeah, all of the streetlights that we currently install have what are called house side shields. So they have a shield, that faces the house behind it. But if you are on the opposite side of the street, you may, entertain some light into your, lower bedroom or lower level rooms. But it's 70-watt LED, very soft lighting.
So is the dark skies requirement and the conditions imply that those will be shielded?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So all of our streetlights are dark sky compliant, and so it is a downcast light.
Correct,
And we'd have the same requirement in the zoning code for any of the building lighting that would be going on the structure. We wouldn't be doing any streetlights as part of this project.
Okay, that's where I was a bit confused.
Please let Frank know that. But we, so I mean, the only public improvements that are being done here are in the alley, and we don't have lights in the alley. So
Okay.
I think Paul was really just referring to any of the building lighting.
So they'll be downcast, shielded,
Correct.
full cutoff. Okay, I just wanted to ask that question. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And that motion does carry unanimously with Councilor Davis recusing himself from the vote. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your comments and presentations this evening. You guys want to take a quick break or keep pushing? Keep pushing. We'll move on to item 7, communications from Craig Workman, our Public Works Director, regarding the award of the engineering contract for both Armory Road reconstruction and the East 6th Street reconstruction project.
We have another public hearing. You're looking over me?
Gosh, I'm sorry.
Man.
I need readers. We'll move on to item 6C, and we'll stay with Michelle, which will be resolution 24-7, amending resolution number 14-21 to remove engraving fees for the columbarium. Michelle, my apologies.
It'll be really quick, I promise. So in 2014, the city installed a columbarium to hold cremation ashes and urns as a way to add capacity to the existing city cemetery. The council adopted Resolution 1421 establishing those rates, which were to purchase a vault and then also any related services such as the engraving fees. Those fees were established by Big Mountain, or Big Sky Monuments, which is now out of business, and gratefully Glacier Memorial Gardens took on that service and they honored those fees. Currently, those engraving fees are have increased, and the fees that are in the resolution are outdated. The proposed resolution is asking to drop those fees from the resolution so that any of those fees that are increased don't have to come through the council every time that they're increased and redo that resolution. So simply, this resolution is just dropping those fees and turning it all over to Glacier Memorial to be able to establish their fees and push that towards the customer.
Question, Giuseppe?
Just a quick one. We got good sound bites. Just a quick one. What if the vendor were to be a different one? I'm okay with the principle, but are we voting to have the city being taken out of the loop between the producer of the plaques and the consumer?
Pretty much, yes. We do have an agreement that we've created for those who buy a niche that they will go through Glacier Memorial. If they choose to go to another engraver, they have to check with the city to make sure that the font size and the font match what Glacier Memorial is doing, and it has to be approved by us. We want to make sure that it's unique and similar.
Further questions for Michelle? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be Resolution 24-27. Any public comments? Michelle, anyone online? Go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Second? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Further discussion?
Yeah, I could make a joke to double the fees to the non-residents, but I keep it quiet.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thank you, Michelle. Now we will move on to item 7, communications from our Public Works Director to consider awarding an engineering contract for both the Armory Road project as well as the East 6th Street reconstruction project. Craig.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I think everyone's familiar with these two projects. East 6th Street and Armory have been selected as the next two projects on the resort tax priority list. Both of these projects have road surface concerns, lack bike and pedestrian amenities, and have significant safety concerns during school drop-off and pickup. Council directed staff to proceed with engineering selection back in April. In accordance with the consultant selection policy, we did advertise for proposals for both projects. They were due on June 28th. Council appointed myself and Karin to serve on the rating panel, and Karin, myself, and Andy Fury on the selection panels for the RFP. We received a total of 3 proposals. The respondents were Robert Pesh and Associates, HDR, and Morrison Merrily. We reviewed the proposals and conducted an interview of all 3 firms on July 17th. Upon completion of the interviews, it was the unanimous opinion of the selection panel that a contract be awarded to HDR for the East 6th Street reconstruction project, and that a contract be awarded to Morrison Merrily for the Armory Road reconstruction projects. The fiscal 25 budget includes $2.5 million for resort tax roadway construction projects. This will include about $1 million to finish up the Caro Avenue project this summer, and it allocate about $1.5 million to begin preliminary design on both of these projects. We will also, it also does leave some funding to begin one or the other next summer. So based on the complexity of the Armory Road project and the $7 million estimate for construction, we feel that it's going to be difficult to fund Armory for construction in 2025. The most likely scenario will be to construct East 6th Street first, which will allow time to field test some of the solutions on Armory, complete the design, and accrue cash to build the project. We've obviously heard from a number of residents tonight that feel very passionate about Armory and being involved in the project, and we have every intention of making that happen. Ben Miller is here tonight from Morrison Merrily. He will be the project manager should this contract be awarded, and we've already talked about how to begin that public outreach project how to maybe do some kind of trial tests on the curve for this winter to try and make things safer. And that'll be the very, first thing that we start on that project. East 6th Street is a little more straightforward. There's very few utilities that we need to manage on that project. It's mostly just a roadway reconstruction job with curb gutter and some type of shared use facility. So we feel that we can design that one a lot quicker. We'll still go through an elaborate outreach process to make sure people's voices are heard, but I really do think Armory is going to be a more sensitive job and will take a little more time. But we'll get more into that as we move forward, assuming these contracts are awarded. So it is the recommendation of the Public Works Department that a contract be awarded to HDR for East 6th Street and a contract be awarded to Morris and Merrily for Armory.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions for Craig? Or I would entertain a motion, Andy?
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we award the engineering to HDR for the East 6th Street reconstruction project and to Morrison and Meyerly for the Armory Road reconstruction project.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Giuseppe. Further discussion? Thanks for coming, Ben. Yeah, good luck with the project. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Craig. I notice Cole's not here to present this next item. Is that going to be handled by Michelle?
I can do it, but I think Dana was going to maybe do it. I'll see if she's going to pop on. If not, I can do it.
Okay.
I am here.
Hi, Dana.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for letting me participate remotely. I did get back from our family reunion, but not without a cold. So in a means of not sharing this, I am participating remotely. Chief Hadley is out on leave at this time. So I did coordinate with him prior, though, that with his order to move us to stage 1 fire restrictions when the Flathead County and other state and federal agencies did for the Northwest area. So an order was issued on August 3rd, moving us to stage 1 fire restrictions, which prohibits the building, maintaining, attending, or using a campfire, fire pit, or other open fire. Also, motorized vehicles may only be used on designated roads and trails. And then there's prohibition of smoking, except within enclosed vehicles or buildings, a developed campground, recreation site, or while stopped in an area with at least 3 feet in diameter that is barren and cleared of all flammable materials. There are a few exceptions for stage 1 fire restrictions, which are listed within the ordinance and my staff report. But in accordance with ordinance number 1725, the fire chief's order for it to continue shall be considered by the city council at its next meeting by an emergency ordinance. So with that, staff respectfully recommends the city council enacts emergency ordinance, placing a stage 1 fire restrictions within city limits, providing exceptions, and waiving the second reading with an immediate effective date.
Thank you, Dana. Any questions for Dana? Steve?
I have a question. Given the rain yesterday, is this still a necessary thing that we need to do? I know you weren't here.
Yeah, I did see that you guys were getting rain though, so that was nice, and came home to at least cooler temperatures. Currently we're still in stage 1 fire restrictions. We could remove them as soon as the county lifts them, but just given the warmer temperatures, I don't think that they're anticipating removing them anytime soon. It is very dry, especially in the county or in the valley. West of town, you might not see it as dry up north, but this is really to help with messaging for our visitors and residents so that we're consistent, because the fire service area is under stage 1 restrictions right now. And so what we've done in the past is we've repealed the ordinance once these restrictions are lifted at the county level.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Further questions for Dana? I'd entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Councilor Davis. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise up. Excuse me.
Sorry, very quickly. I understand your concern, your point about the rain, but I can tell you right now it's dry all over. We just had a fire and the Bob Marshall started, and 2 acres, and it's already 36 acres, and we had one in Whitefish near Beavers Lake, I think, a week and a half ago. So better safe than sorry, and we can always lift it. Thank you.
Thanks, Giuseppe. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thank you, Dana. We'll move on to item 9, which is communications from our city attorney. And we will address consideration to approve the Beck et al. Versus City et al. Case number CV-22-44-M-DLC-KLD settlement agreement and release and authorize the city manager to execute the same. Angie.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I'm going to give you a little bit more background than you probably need or want to know on this, but I think it's important for education of at least the public. So in the summer of 2021, we discovered an error in the calculation of individual water and wastewater impact fees that occurred between January 1st of 2019 and July 31st of 2021. As a city, we publicly acknowledged our error, and basically what the error was that it had to do with weighting of single head standalone showers. We immediately started an audit to determine what the city should refund to individuals who had paid too much in individual impact fees. We've always acknowledged our error and fully intended to issue refunds once we completed our audit. Unfortunately, while we are remedying our error, a putative class action was filed against us in Federal District Court in Missoula in February 2022 by 5 individuals and 2 developers. The lawsuit not only encompassed our error in counting single standalone shower heads, but it actually alleged that our impact fees as a whole, which were calculated by FCS Group, our consultant, were unreasonable. We did join FCS Group as a defendant in that case. We have always stood by what they did. We do not think that what they calculated the impact fees to be were unreasonable in any way. We just believe that if a jury were to come back and say that the fees were unreasonable, that the city really had nothing to do with calculating those fees. That is who we hired a consultant to do. The plaintiff sought over $3.8 million in damages against us. Our interlocal authority denied a defense and indemnity based upon a clause in our, basically our insurance agreement that excludes fees and assessment, or overcharge of fees and assessment. So we did hire a private law firm to defend us in that class action lawsuit. So in 2023, September, almost a year ago, the federal court did certify the class action. I disagree with that decision, but I guess it doesn't really matter at this point. We went to class action, we went to mediation with the federal magistrate, and he suggested a settlement of $1.4 million with FCS paying $1 million and the city of Whitefish paying $400,000. Tentatively, all parties agreed to that, and a settlement and release was drafted. FCS Group would contribute $1 million and the city would contribute $400,000. In return, the parties would basically release all claims against each other arising out of the development, calculation, and adoption of the city's impact fees, the city's administration, assessment, and or collection of impact fees, all work done by FCS on the impact fees, and cost and attorney's fees. So the amount paid by the city and FCF Group would be deposited in a settlement fund, which would remain under the jurisdiction of the court. There is, in a settlement like this, class settlement, there is a settlement authority, which would basically be the plaintiff's attorneys in this point, because it makes more sense than to pay somebody else. I know it sounds like a really huge number, but in class action world, it's really not. So it would be distributed as follows: so notice and administrative expenses, and then service award payments to the named plaintiffs which are actually capped at $3,500 per the settlement agreement, unless they want more, and if for some reason the court allows that. And then it would be fee awardings and cost, which is attorney's fees for the plaintiff's attorneys, and then payments to class members. So the net settle amount after all of that is about $744,000 that will be distributed to class members. Class counsel will be responsible for providing notice to the class members within 30 days of the court's preliminary approval. Refunds due to individuals or entities of the result of our fixture count error constitute about $210,000 in change, which is actually completely in line with what we estimated with our audit that we actually owe. They have not been reduced by attorney's fees, so if you overpaid because of our error, you'll receive your full amount of a refund back. I think it's worthy to note that the settlement agreement release is not an admission of liability. We have always admitted that we made a fixture count error due to, no inadvertence by staff, just by training, and it's not an admission of wrongdoing. We have always stood by the fact that FCS correctly calculated impact fees. That was wholly supported by our expert testimony in this case, and we had a wonderful expert in this case. So it will be provided, the impact fees, the entire $400,000 will be paid from the water and wastewater impact fee funds, both of which have adequate reserves. Again, I'd note this is not an admission of liability or that FCS or the city did anything wrong. This, at this point, is risk management. We could go to trial. We will be facing much more than the difference between the $400,000 we're committing and the $210,000 that we admittedly owe to trial costs. There's always a risk of trial. I'm confident that we did everything right and FCS did right, but again, this is just risk management and protecting the ratepayers at this point. So staff does respectfully recommend that the council approve the settlement agreement and release and authorize the city manager to execute the same. And I'm open to any questions.
Thanks, Angela. Any questions for Angie? Would entertain a motion, Andy?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve the Beck et al. V. City et al. Settlement agreement and release and authorize our city manager, Dana Smith, to execute the same.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Angela. We will move on to communications from Dana Smith, our city manager. You have Dana's report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana? We'll start with Giuseppe.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Dana, I'm not sure you're still there, but we have postponed 2 work sessions for very good reasons. I think I see one upcoming, but later. I was wondering, why wouldn't we shift the 2 that we postponed to the upcoming meetings? Because if they were so important and urgent to have had in the past 2 meetings, one being this one tonight and one being the previous one, why wouldn't we shift every meeting forward and keep the original order?
Dana,
I think it's Giuseppe. Oh yeah, I'm here. So that's a great question, Giuseppe. Actually, the September 3rd meeting will change from this report. We got notice from the Housing Authority that their 5-year plan is not due this year. And so that will open up time on the September 3rd, where we will move the property tax relief discussion up to September 3rd. Angie and I's performance evals could then move up to September 16th as well. And so the October 21st, the progress report on the Vision Whitefish 2045 growth policy update that one's just based on timing availability for staff. So that one will stay October 21st. But yeah, it's like always changing. And so this is kind of a static view, but we will make some shifts and move things up actually.
Additional questions for Dana? I know, Dana, you had some updates you'd like to provide us, in particular regarding the FY25 budget.
Yes, I do. So the city received its taxable valuation from the Department of Revenue today. It came in at $81,046. 0.924 since they go out to 3 digits. That is just slightly under what was projected. It was just off 0.026%. So roughly $20.92 per mil. So very minimal impact from that difference. I usually like to project low, thought I did, but you know, things are changing. So still, I think within a good margin of error. So we'll be able to absorb that shortfall of like $1,200. As we see, we've still got to go through all of the calculations with the new state forms. We did have, excuse me, our the preliminary beginning fund balances are available. We haven't seen anything that seems unusual. Some of the funds where we see more money are higher beginning balance than expected is related to timing of construction projects or capital projects. So those will carry forward. So I'm happy to report that I think we're in line with our projections on growth in the city around that 2.5%. It's 2.47%. And we'll be moving forward with all of the budget changes that were suggested during the work sessions, and you will see that August 19th.
Thanks, Dana. Anything additional to report on?
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Great. We'll move on to item 11. We do have Toby Scott's letter enclosed in the packet. He addressed the council earlier. Steve.
I just wonder how hard would it be to check into something like a counter for the garage? Just, it kind of makes sense at this point.
So,
Dana, yeah.
This is Dana. We've looked into one before, and they are, I would say this was back when we started, this is when the garage was first built. I know that it was around $60,000 to $70,000. We would have to put in some type of lane correction where we had taken out the concrete that was separated into lanes. You'd have to have more control over that. We can look into it more again, but I know that it was difficult to come up with the funding for it. And then knowing that the top part of the structure, the second floor, those are lease parking during the day, so it's not even open to the public. And so, you know, you'd have to change the counter somehow for non-lease hours versus lease hours because the lease parking really is not available. I think that's a challenge with the counter. So we can look at it if council directs us to do so, but I know there are just challenges with it.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion really either way, and I don't know how much of a problem it is outside of a couple, maybe a month or 6 weeks out of the year. I'd like to get a handle on when it's a big problem and then maybe come up with a solution for next summer potentially, if that's possible.
I can tell you right now, the problem exists 5 or 6 Tuesdays a summer.
Yep.
And it's really just on farmer's market night when this town is just overwhelmed. We may almost want to just consider staffing somebody at the bottom of the parking structure to put a sign up that says full and then pull it down when he counts 10 cars that leave. You know, as an alternative, because the infrastructure that would be required to get the counter would be fairly significant. There is conduit, and there was previously a median in the middle. Well, it wasn't in the middle. That was the problem, was that it had 2 lanes out and 1 lane in, and everybody trying to get onto the incoming side of the median kept hitting the wall, and that's why there's those steel plates on the column there now. So we kind of removed that in the interest of sanity, if you will. You know, but I think there's alternatives beyond just the electronic options.
Additional comments on Toby's letter? Ben.
first of all, Toby, thank you for bringing up new ideas. I appreciate it. I think that's a good one, even though I think the challenges mean maybe it doesn't work now. But I'm no traffic engineer, but I will say, as to the intersection of 13th Street and Baker, my anecdotal experience is that I agree with Toby. This intersection just seems to constantly be a problem. I don't know, Craig, you got any thoughts on that intersection?
My biggest concern with the traffic signal at 13th and Baker is it's just going to push the traffic either onto 13th, where they're going to stage waiting to get onto the highway, or further down Baker. I mean, that does give them other opportunities at 15th and Commerce and 18th, or 19th, but I don't know that a traffic signal is the solution.
When would we next study that intersection in a scientific way?
We've begun conversations with MDT about kind of reintroducing some of the aspects of the downtown Whitefish highway study that we agree on. But I mean, I think we all remember Bob Vosen's last comment, or actually it wasn't Bob that came, it was Joel Boucher at the work session a month or so ago. They don't have the funding for it. So if we want to see improvements at 13th and Baker, we're going to have to move forward with some other alternatives. It's probably going to involve creating that traffic advisory committee that we talked about. It could involve, a resolution to request that MDT recharacterize that, or I forget exactly what the term is, but make it an actual primary or secondary route, reevaluate the status of that roadway. There's a few different things that we can do to help foster that conversation, but it's not going to happen very quickly.
I mean, would you recommend anything here? Any of those things you just suggested?
The biggest problem is the north-south traffic. I mean, the cross streets at 13th really aren't a big deal. I really do think a roundabout at that intersection is the best solution. But that's a lot more invasive than even a traffic signal, because we'd need right-of-way, and we'd have to completely blow out all four corners, from the credit union to the Wave to, the Safeway gas station and grocery store. So I think a roundabout would serve the city the best, but that's a major project.
Giuseppe?
Yeah, just a quick comment following up. I think that if we did a study right now, any study would be skewed by the closure of Caro. So
Sure.
Goods and Baker and even Spokane are suffering part of the flow that normally, some of the flow that normally would go through Caro, me included, has to go through either farm to market all the way out there, or either Baker or Spokane or Goods sometimes. So I agree that we should base our decisions on data, but right now with the closure of Caro, I hate to say, but I think we should postpone any study. On the roundabout, I hate to disagree with Toby. We've been working together for 20 years on many things, but it's been proven that traffic flow-wise, in that particular circumstance, like it was on 93 and 40, a roundabout would be more effective than a traffic light.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Any other comments? How about we start with Giuseppe tonight?
Absolutely, thank you. I first apologize for my being late tonight. Sorry about that. I just wanted to point out that in these days is the 75th anniversary of the Man Gulch tragedy. It was a fire where 12 firefighters lost their lives. They jumped out of a plane, a DC-3 that now is called Miss Montana, and it's a state aircraft, and it's sitting at the Museum of Mountain Flying in Missoula. So right now we're celebrating the memory of those firefighters, as well as the memory of one of them who decided to start a fire, surrounding himself and calling all his colleagues to get with him, and they did not believe him. So he was the only one who survived. And since then, the fire blocking walls have become a science. So that's number one, and inviting the public to be very aware about, even when it rains, the dry grass, the dry weeds are still there, and they can start smoldering, and you have a fire before you know it. That brings me to the second point. We're all hikers. Most of us are hikers, adventurers, rafters, kayakers. If you see even a little tiny smokestack, don't be hesitant to report it. Call 911, call the non-emergency line, and you might be the first one who's seen it. Don't assume someone else has seen it. I just got a fire 2 days ago near a palladium mine near Livingstone, and I was almost not reporting it. And when I called it in, we sent 2 helicopters with 2 buckets and stopped it. It could have been a big fire. So if you see a smokestack, even a small one, report it. Better safe than sorry. And lastly, this August 15, Thursday, right before the community board meeting at 5:30, the city will host another one of the visioning sessions. So what better way to participate to our public life without having to run for any of these positions than to come for 1 hour in this room and participate to the visioning sessions of our growth policy development. Thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say my comments were born out of the fact that I tried to play golf yesterday, and I have not been that wet on a golf course since I was probably 13 years old. I tried to tough it out with the mayor's brother, but he's much stronger and more into golf than I am.
That's how you
So so three of us quit, and Clint kept going. I do want to bring up that this not yesterday, but Sunday before was the 4th annual Last Best Ride. I participated again. It is one of the most fun and interesting events, I think, that goes on in our town in the summertime. And we have people from all over the world that come and ride, people of all different kinds of abilities and races and just different perspectives on life come here. And what I think is really cool about it is that these people come here to challenge themselves. They don't just come here to consume our town and be consumers. They do that too, but they also come to challenge themselves. I got to ride for almost a full half hour with Paralympic champion, world champion, and gold medalist. For about 30 minutes, I got to ride with her until we started going downhill, and she's much better at that than I am. Much more fearless than I am. But again, I want to thank Sarah, and now Stella Holt, who are the 2 race directors, for putting this on again, and I hope we can continue this Last Best Ride indefinitely. I know it's an inconvenience to a lot of people when a whole block of downtown is shut down for the whole day, but it really is quite a treat. You get to sit outside, have a drink, eat some food, listen to Baranowski go on about whatever he's going on about, and it's really just a great time. So if you missed out, hopefully we'll be back next year and you can come down and participate. And I challenge all of you to get on a bike and do it. It's a lot of fun.
That's a tough race.
It is a tough.
I do the short course. So
I was on Big Mountain when the races were coming through on Saturday.
Oh yeah,
it was impressive.
Yeah, the long course is that's too much suffering for me.
Kind of surprised they had tequila at the top for the racers.
Fireball.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Ben.
I would thank staff. I have been driving around and seeing a lot of overlays or seal coats and new striping on the roads. I think everybody appreciates that, so I just wanted to give a shout out to staff for getting that done. Thank you. And I did also want to make a quick comment on Cameron Blake's comments earlier on the Housing Committee. As you all know, we recently evaluated the proposed annexation policy, and we declined to move forward with it, which I think was the right decision. I think the idea for a work session is a good idea. You know, the thing about that committee is a lot of the tasks that are in the housing plan that they would do next, just like the annexation policy, would be significant policy items that take political will, and they're complicated, and they take a while to do. And so I think there was some frustration on the committee that all that work was done on a policy item that didn't go anywhere. look, sometimes you figure things out later, and that's just how it is. But I do think it would help at some point, and it doesn't have to be once a quarter, but we could have a short work session with that committee and just talk about the next couple things that are coming up. I think that would be beneficial for everybody, and make sure we're all on the same page before we spend a lot of staff time and a lot of volunteer time to do it. So just wanted to say that, and other than that, I hope everybody's having a great summer.
Thanks, Ben. Rebecca.
Yep, I just wanted to remind the public that we still have the local government review commission that needs members. We only have one applicant so far, Michelle.
I think we have 2.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So we need 3 more, and I did talk to Carl. He still has the paperwork. Carl Kozad's thinking about it. So we need 2 more, and we need to influence Carl. And I actually liked what Cameron was saying, that she wants to work with us more rather than being shot down like that. But I think incentives for an annexation policy could work. Voluntary incentives, not anything that would lead us into a lawsuit. And I have some other ideas I'd like to go through with them. So I think a work session would be good. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Rebecca. Andy.
Yeah, getting back to Steve's comment over there, I think one thing that we need to do as an emergency services department is reach out to Stella and Jess next year. There was an injury up on Werner Peak. It was a neck injury. We had to send our people in the 6x6 up there, which took them out of town for over 3.5 hours. Two Bear was not able to land. They were on another call, and alert can't land in this particular spot, so we sent our 6x6 out there, which rumbled all the way up there, which left us with very limited coverage in town for almost 3.5 hours. I know from the department, they thought about trying to call Flathead Search and Rescue, but those guys are very, very slow to mobilize. So I think we should be proactive with them and reach out and say, we need you guys to come up with a plan for a little better medical coverage, because it's a long race on some very difficult terrain, and people to get hurt. I guess it was a neck injury, and the guy laid there for like 1.5 hours before they even got the call. So anyway, I think that's something that we should do before next year's race, and I'm sure everybody will be happy to do that. But I don't think from a medical personnel standpoint, there was much out there for help for folks. So, and
There was more than the previous 3 versions, I will say that.
I know. But just, I think, when it puts our other citizens at risk in the community, then I think we need to start thinking about it. So, my only other comment is I have to say I've been pretty pleased driving around town this last week. The number of times people have been courteous to let folks make left turns, enter onto a road has been kind of remarkable. I have to say, I caught myself going, wow, we live in a pretty good place, because traffic is hard, but I think people have been trying to be very accommodating, and I just want to thank visitors and residents alike, because it's nice to see that you don't have to get there immediately. And if you could, the only thing is, though, is it's not an opportunity to check your social media and then sit there for about 3 minutes and leave a big gap in the traffic. So anyway, that's it. That's all I have.
Thanks, Andy. I have nothing further this evening. Dana, anything on your end, or directors for that matter? Hey, Ben.
Not for me.
Thanks, Dana.
Just one supplemental comment. We did approve a legal settlement here this evening, and a lot of those legal settlements, when they're pending litigation, we discuss in private. Just a thought that perhaps the city could consider putting out a statement or something explaining what just happened here. Seems like it could benefit the public, but just putting that out there.
Angie?
Happy to draft one for council consideration.
Great. I agree. Thanks, Angie. And on that note, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.